Hello, everyone, and welcome. It's Britton here. Today, we're going to be talking about Wool, the novel. I decided to review this book first. Well, I really shouldn't call it a review. I think it's going to be more of a breakdown, something that I'm going to be calling the Crow Rites, Rites, rights. The basics that would make a novel really good for me, and if it could hit all four of these things, then it's going to be super solid. Doesn't mean it can't miss a couple and still be good. I know there's going to be certain things that some people will really gravitate towards, and it might mean more to them, and some of those things might mean less to me. So in a way, it's totally subjective. But there are a couple of objective things that I would like to highlight with this one. It's a good book, and I mean, just to start it off, it is a good book. There are some things I had problems with, but I'd like to get into them. But overall, great read. The four rights that I'm going with are people, plot, place, and prose. So, yeah, let's jump right into people here. So that's the characters. How are the characters here? Gosh, there's actually a lot of characters, a good number of them. I guess I should go ahead and mention before we go further, because speaking of characters, there's gonna be some spoilers here. So I know the book's been out for a little while, but just in case people want to read it, and you got my thoughts at the beginning there, go read it, check it out if you like dystopians, if you like good writing. But yeah, I definitely want to just because I'm going to break it down. I want to jump into some spoilers. A lot of the characters do die, especially some ones that I like. I mean, a lot of the POV characters die. I think that's just the style of how he's writing. He likes to dangle that in front of you and kind of pull at your heartstrings. I get it. I get it. So yeah, that I think that actually might be one of my complaints with some of the characters is they jump in with us and then they leave. Um, Happens with a lot of big novels. I mean, A Song of Ice and Fire, you get a lot of deaths, so you know maybe don't connect with some of those characters, but there's still ones like in that series that they kind of linger though. There's characters that you can still gravitate to and hang on to for a lot longer. Now, granted, it's a much longer book than Wool, or even the series is than the Silo Saga. So I get it that there's not really a one-to-one comparison. You do have a main thread with Juliet, the main character, but the side stories, the ones that jump away from her and kind of create side plots or to create a plot that's next to hers, those characters kind of go in and out. And so, yeah, some of them I didn't really feel all that attached to. I love Holston. That's the sheriff. I think he's a great character. He doesn't stick around for too long though. And the book actually does something that I feel like a lot of books are straying away from these days, and probably for good reason, where you have a bit of a prologue section, and that's your main character, but that character dies, and then you jump in to the full story, and that first POV kind of introduces you to the world, introduces you to the story, sets up some sort of tension or stakes. um, and I understand that device. I think that I would like it to be more streamlined though, as I especially in this when I was reading it. um, but it was still used effectively. Like the Holston as a character, when he goes away, I mean, that kicks off the actual narrative of the plot. So I do understand him having to leave because that's how you are able to get Juliet as a focal point in the story. So yes, overall, Juliet, she didn't love her though. But I do really feel like she's a solid character. So I think I got to give it props to that, because like her attitude really comes out well. I think, like if you, there's a lot of strengths when you're reading a book or when you finish one and you think of a character and then you can instantly pick up what about that character is important, or you just name traits about them. And that's just signs of a good character. Almost like pluck her out of the scene and put her in one of your own, and you would know how she would react to something. I think the plot is what makes it suffer a bit for me, for the characters, because I think the characters are strong, and some of them characters are kind of weak in others because they just don't stay too long, or they do feel almost like plot devices. This uprising idea, given dystopian, I feel like that's essential, right? It's almost tropey, but it's still good. Like why would you not have some type of pushback? a narrative where there's a controlling society or government. Yeah, you feel that these characters are kind of set down this fatalistic path, and you just know they're going to die, or they don't really have much to contribute other than to this little war that they're creating. And that's, for better or worse, but that's what happens. And some of them will die, and others will be able to make it, and that's cool because then you can follow them for a little longer. But overall, that's where the plot kind of it's a bit, it just feels familiar. And maybe that's a subjective opinion because I have read a good bit of dystopian novels, or even really even just in media in general. There's a lot of dystopian ideas out there. You got the classics like 1984. That is, the quintessential dystopian novel, and that one really stuck with me. Stuck with a lot of people. Brave New World is another classic one to me that is just amazing. I love that book. So, another one that really stuck with me that this just echoed to me the whole book was Fallout. I know that's a video game series and it's been recently turned into a TV show, but the ideas they I couldn't help but make they just felt similar to me. I mean, honestly, when you break it down, they're kind of the same thing. Some event happens in the real world in the past, and we jump to a future where human civilization is still existing, but it's underground. I mean, that's at the bare minimum. That's what has happened. It's familiar. Doesn't mean it has to be bad though. Like it depends. Familiarity. It's all about what you've consumed in the past. So, I've consumed a lot of these. The Road is another one I consider heavily dystopian, but there is this lack of knowledge behind how or why it's dystopian, so it's a little different. But there's still this idea in my mind about, okay, the world has perished in some way. It is just a landfill or a scorched earth somehow. If I were to rewrite this, I would make some scenes a little shorter. There's a certain scene towards the three-quarter mark where Juliet is trying to accomplish a goal, and I just felt like that lingered a bit because at that point for the reader, you are wondering what is going on with the other silo. And thankfully, Howie does deliver. He does tell you a good bit through a different character. And I was almost more interested in that than the goal that Juliet was trying to accomplish. And again, that might be subjective, but that was how I felt reading it. And so, yeah, that's just kind of where I landed. A lot of it, some of it was a miss, but then I was really locked in at other parts of the plot. Let's jump into the place. So that's the location, the world building element of the story. I think that's really this novel really shines. The silo itself is described in a very good way. It's really integrated well into the characters' lives, what's going on. It feels real. Um, you can definitely get this sense of, which can be hard to accomplish sometimes, this sense that the world, or the silo in this case, is larger than what the character is seeing. And that's really a great thing to accomplish when you see that there's a little society going on, when you see some of those details. I think this was definitely one of the best parts of the novel was getting this idea of how the people live in the silo and a lot of the descriptions that come with that. So major props to that. To close with the final of the rights, we're looking at the prose, and that is strictly just the way that it was written. How does it read? And this is another just really big highlight for me. The way that he describes, it kind of relates to the place, the actual location, the way that he describes a lot of the things that are going on is really good. I mean, just the very first page, he goes into detail on the thoughts of Holston and him reflecting on the silo and what it means to live there and how the people are interacting and um, kind of asking himself some questions. Those kinds of it's really cool to see the reflectiveness of the character and then the location, the juxtaposition of the two, or like one bouncing off the other. Even though the silo is an inanimate object, is really cool. He's done a good job of making it feel alive with his prose, and the flow is very good. The His word choice is quite varied, and it keeps you really thinking as you're reading it. You're like, okay, I can really see that. I mean, there's a pull up one portion. This is his variety of words here. He says, this is towards the end of the novel. going back actually to the task that Juliet was doing that I referenced earlier. He's talking about bubbles, and he does describe bubbles in a really interesting way, like multiple times. But here he says, a never-ending stream of bubbles rolled up her visor like beads of solder, drifting up in defiance of gravity, which reminded me of Wicked, but um, different conversation. I just like that he's thinking of different ways to describe bubbles moving upward. Um, it's it could so easily be just said they moved upward. But to be creative in that sense, I just got to give him a lot of credit. It's really really well done. Another quote here that just really wraps up the whole idea of this novel. It comes later as well. It says they put us in this game, a game where breaking the rules means we all die, every single one of us. But living by those rules, obeying them means we all suffer. Again, I just really like the way that his words flow. He does a very good job of making it very readable, but also having you think about what's going on in the scene, what's going on around the characters. Uh, his the way he writes actually reminds me a lot of, say, Michael Crichton. If anyone has read Jurassic Park or a couple of his other books, I'd say Crichton's a little more dry. I think that Howie has a really good narrative flow, and it's evident in the way that he writes and actually his backstory. So, for anyone watching, I definitely recommend you check out his website. I'll actually put his website in the description, just so you can check out his blog. For aspiring writers, it really is good to check out what he's written, some tips on how to be a successful writer. And but in short, he's saying to just keep writing, keep doing things, keep writing. He's got a ton of short stories. He's written plenty in the Silo universe. The takeaway is just that. It's just to keep stretching your mind, keep challenging yourself, keep finding new words, keep finding new ways to tell the same thing. And I mean, honestly, Howie's work ethic is clear here. You can see it in the way that he writes. So I've already jumped into Shift, the second book of the Silo Saga. Super pumped. Um, but yeah, I definitely would give this a recommend. The Crow writes, it passes on for sure the prose and the place. And I'd say I give it a good, pretty good pass on character. Plot, it falls a little for me, but it's still interesting. So I can't just say that, hey, it was so boring or tropey that I couldn't get through it. That's not it. So I definitely say it holds its weight still to a lot of the other novels I've read. Um, if you haven't read it and you're considering it, if you like things like Cormac McCarthy, give this a try. To give you a real feel, like to really set you in the universe. I mean, McCarthy does a great job of just describing things well in a convincing manner. Still, overall, a great read, and yeah, definitely check out Hugh Howey some more. The last thing I'll say on this is that I don't want to be too critical on the on Wool itself because early in my reading, I learned that the novel wasn't actually released as a novel initially. It was released in short story form, and I believe he did five to round out the story. And at times, I think it's apparent that that has taken place when you're reading them. You'll see that that's why I think some of them or some of the plot points do drag on a bit. And I can see it's probably because there are certain sections that he made and he didn't want to make certain things too short or he wanted to maybe hone in on something else, but I can see that maybe the structure would be a little different if he had started out by doing just a full novel. I'm sure he had the full idea in his head, but he released it in a periodic form through Amazon. So I can't criticize too much on that because I understand like this is just sometimes how you get your work out is you just need to publish short stories and let the public read it, and if it's good, then it'll catch steam, which it did. So definitely go bear in mind that when you're reading. And then when you're done, check out the show, Silo. So anyway, guys, um, please do send me your writing if you'd like, and I'd love to critique them. As always, my email is going to be in the description. Send me your synopsis and the first 5,000 words of your novel or short story. That's cool too. And it can be in any genre. I primarily do science fiction fantasy, but hit me with the just general fiction, more speculative stuff, more horror. even some romance. Why not? So, yeah, guys, would love to see it. Let's keep telling good stories together, and I'll see you next time. See ya.